Welcome to Manila Updates TV. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. The news broke on a cold January morning, flashing across screens worldwide. Breaking: Russian warships engage U.S. carrier in the North Atlantic. The world imagined chaos, fearing the start of a new war. But, on the USS George H.W. Bush, there was no panic, just focused tension. The crew moved with calm discipline, trained for moments like this. The Combat Information Center became the nerve center, tracking a Russian surface action group. The real story was not one of explosions, but of restraint. The crisis was real, but so was the crew's resolve. This was the true story behind the headline. Before the tension, it was just another day aboard the USS George H.W. Bush, a city at sea with over 5,000 people. The day began with coffee, breakfast, and routine. Sailors moved with purpose, some to the flight deck, others to the engine rooms. The rhythm was steady, built on discipline and training. On deck, jets were prepped for training flights. Below, mechanics and technicians kept systems running. The flight deck buzzed with teamwork and professionalism. In the command center, officers monitored radar screens, always alert. The carrier strike group, cruisers and destroyers, formed a protective shield. The mood was relaxed but vigilant. They were always ready for the unexpected. Life mixed hard work with brief moments of rest. Emails, home, workouts, movies. The crew was a family, relying on each other for support. These small moments of normalcy eased the stress of months at sea. The sense of community was strong, built on shared experience. But this normal day would soon be tested. The routine would give way to crisis. The city at sea was about to face a challenge unlike any other. The calm before the storm was ending. Trouble began as small blips on a radar screen. 3 fast-moving contacts, military, not commercial. The mood in the Combat Information Center shifted instantly to focused intensity. The contacts were quickly identified: a Russian Slava-class cruiser and 2 destroyers, heading straight for the carrier. This was no coincidence, it was a direct challenge. On the bridge, Captain Miller studied the chart, recognizing the test. The ship's alert status was quietly raised. No alarms, just preparation. Training flights paused, jets secured, damage control teams checked gear. The ship became a coiled spring, every sailor understanding the gravity without a word. The Russian ships grew larger on the horizon, their silhouettes menacing. American escorts tightened their screen, placing themselves between the carrier and the Russians. The silent conversation began, not with words, but with the movement of steel warships. The crew's training kicked in, every action deliberate. The Russians' approach was a message, and the Americans responded with calm readiness. The tension was real, but so was the discipline. The ships closed in, the stakes rising with every mile. The world outside saw only headlines, but on the carrier, every move mattered. The sailors prepared for whatever might come, their professionalism unwavering. The Russian ships pressed closer, the Americans held their ground. The test was underway, and both sides knew it. The ocean was the stage, the ships the players. The outcome would depend on skill, nerve, and restraint. The Americans sent a clear signal: we see you, and we are ready. The Russians answered with silence and steel. The standoff had begun. The next move could change everything. As Russian ships closed in, the USS Farragut tried to make contact. Russian warship, this is US Navy warship on guard. Request you remain at a safe distance. The airwaves remained silent, only static replied. The silence was a tactic, intimidation by uncertainty. The lack of communication only heightened the tension. The CIC tracked every move, watching for escalation. But the Americans stayed disciplined, following procedures by the book. The standoff was tense, but the Americans would not be baited. The silence on the airwaves was met with strength on the water. The warships were now only miles apart. The dance began. The Russian cruiser cut across the carrier's path, a provocative move. A collision would be catastrophic. It was a game of chicken with thousands of lives at stake. Captain Miller did not flinch. Maintain course and speed. The carrier pressed forward, a statement of resolve. Instead, Miller ordered the USS Normandy to intercept, placing itself between the Russian cruiser and the carrier. The Normandy matched every Russian turn, a masterful display of seamanship. Russian destroyers made high-speed runs, coming uncomfortably close. American sailors watched, faces calm, discipline unbroken. The dangerous dance continued for over an hour, ships weaving, each side seeking advantage without firing a shot. The Americans used positioning to shield the carrier. The Russians tried to disrupt and provoke. It was a chess match on the ocean, every move calculated. The Americans kept broadcasting calls, met only with silence. The tension was palpable, the stakes immense. The crews on both sides knew one wrong move could mean disaster, but the Americans held their ground, refusing to be rattled. The dance was dangerous, but the discipline held. The standoff continued, the outcome uncertain. The world watched, waiting for the next move. Captain Miller stood on the bridge, calm but alert, responsible for thousands of lives and a powerful ship. He knew the Russians wanted a reaction, something to use as propaganda or justification. "We will not give it to them," he told his executive officer. His strategy: control the narrative by controlling his crew. The captain's calm spread through the ship. The crew trusted his judgment. This trust was the foundation of their discipline. Miller ordered 2 FA-18s to alert status. Not launched, but ready. It was a silent signal. We are peaceful, but not weak. The ship operated like a machine, every sailor focused on their task. The message to the Russians was clear: patience, professionalism, and overwhelming force held in reserve. The crew's resolve matched their captains. The standoff was about more than ships, it was about willpower. The Americans would not be provoked. The situation reached its peak as the Russian cruiser turned directly toward the carrier's bow. The distance closed rapidly, collision seemed inevitable. On the bridge, tension was thick, every eye watched the Russian ship. Suddenly the Russian cruiser threw its engines into reverse, slowing to a crawl just yards from the carrier. The game of chicken was over. The Russian commander blinked. The Russians had tried every provocation, but the Americans met each with calm professionalism. No shots fired, no hostile moves, just discipline and resolve. Captain Miller's strategy had worked. The tension broke, quiet relief spread through the crew. There was no celebration, just the knowledge they had passed the test. They had stood their ground without firing a shot. Real power was not about aggression, but control. The breaking point was reached not by force, but by will. The Americans had proven stronger. The crisis had passed, but the lesson remained. The crew's discipline had averted disaster. The world would remember the restraint, not the threat. The standoff ended with professionalism, not violence. The Americans had held the line. The test was over. After the Russian cruiser backed down, the rest of the formation followed. The destroyers slowed, turned, and began to retreat. Their mission of intimidation had failed. The Americans had proven unmovable. On the bridge, officers watched the Russians recede, tracking them until they were just dots on the radar. The alert status was lowered, the FA-18s powered down. Sailors returned to their duties, the ship's rhythm returning to normal. The crisis had passed, no shots fired, no lives lost. Captain Miller allowed himself a small smile. It was a quiet victory. The incident would be studied for years as a lesson in crisis management. Restraint and readiness had prevailed. As night fell, the carrier resumed normal operations. The crew felt pride in their response. They had been tested and not found wanting. The uninvited guests were gone. The city at sea sailed on. The Atlantic was quiet once more. This encounter was more than a standoff. It was a lesson in modern naval power. Power is no longer just about firepower, but about disciplined control. The crew of the USS George H.W. Bush showed that restraint is as important as force. They could have destroyed the Russian ships, but chose patience and professionalism. Firing the first shot would have been failure. Their victory was in compelling the enemy to back down without a fight. This is deterrence in action. Training and discipline made it possible. Hours of drills, trust and leadership. The human element turned a ship into a true instrument of power. The story is one of quiet strength. Dominance at sea is about presence, patience, and readiness, not threats or aggression. The greatest power is the power that does not need to be used. The crew held the line with character, not cannons. Their professionalism was their shield. The world saw a crisis. The crew showed control. In the North Atlantic, true power was restraint.